Hi everyone, it's Kara with Grains in Small Places, and today I wanted to show you a quick recipe for an easy French bread, and we're going to be using hard white wheat, and we're not going to be using a mixer at all. So let's get started. I've had a lot of people asking me questions how they can make bread without a mixer, and it can be done with fresh milled flour. So stick with me, and I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks on what you can do to make your bread without a mixer. So we're going to go ahead and use, like I said, the hard white wheat and 480 grams, and that's going to give us about 4 cups of flour. And what we're going to want to do is, first of all, I like to measure by weight. I feel like it gives us a more accurate amount, but if you want to do it by volume, that's fine. I'll link the recipe below, and it'll end up having the volume, the weight in grams, and how much wheat berries to mill. We're going to mill just a little bit extra of the wheat berries so we can have some flour for our work surface for the kneading process. Now, I know what you're saying. I know normally I will say don't use flour for your kneading and use oil. It's a lot easier, but if you're hand kneading, you may need some flour on your work surface for the beginning part, because it does tend to be just a little bit on the wet side. It helps make it work a little bit easier. Also, as you go through, you'll notice if it starts sticking to your hands more, you could put oil on your hands. So that's another helpful tip. So let's go ahead and mill our flour. And I'm going to mill about 1/4 cup of the wheat berries extra. So it'll give me about probably a 1/2 cup or so of flour extra for my kneading surface. Okay, so to the French bread, I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. So sugar. I forgot to pull out the extra flour, so let me try to do that before I mix the sugar in. Okay, so I've put all my sugar on this one side. I'm just going to pull out about 1/2 cup of that flour for my kneading surface. So I'm going to set that aside and then continue on. The salt, I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons. And then I'm going to take this over and I'm going to mix this around, make a little well, and then we'll pour the warm water in. So the first tip that I'm going to give you is, after you mill your flour, go ahead and mix up all of the ingredients except for the yeast. Now I'm talking about using instant yeast here. You're going to put that in later, and you're going to let all the other ingredients sit covered at room temperature, and you're going to let that sit for at least 30 minutes. You can let it sit for 2 hours. You could forget about it and come back to it later that day, do other things in your house, whatever you need to do. But that is the trick to getting the fresh milled flour to start absorbing the liquid. So this absorption time allows the bread to start forming the gluten without even starting our kneading process. So if you're using active dry cultures, you may need to just save just a little bit of your liquid out of the recipe so that you can activate your yeast later on. And I'll show you what we're going to do to put the yeast in and how we get started with this recipe. You don't want it too hot. You want to be able to put your finger in there and it be nice and warm, but not so hot that you can't touch it, because you don't want to kill your yeast. Okay, so I've milled my flour. I've got my warm water. I went ahead and set my extra flour for my kneading surface, although I won't need that for a while, and I'm going to wait on my yeast. I'm going to bring you in here closer so you'll see a little better. Okay, so here we have the flour and the sugar, and then our warm water. I'm just going to mix the flour and the sugar a little bit till it's all combined here. This is the flour that I milled with this and pulled it out a little bit early. I'm just going to put these little covers on here. Aren't these cute? I got these as a little gift. Thank you. And I'm just going to make a little well and put my 2 cups of pretty warm water in here. And remember, there's no yeast. I'm just going to put a little bit at a time. You may need a little more flour or a little less flour than I do. Everybody's wheat has a little bit different hydration, and everybody's humidity level is different, and everybody measures just a little bit different as well. So I'm really just using like one finger to mix this together. And as you can see, there's still some dry flour down at the bottom here. I want to make sure this is all incorporated before I cover it, so that I can make sure that all the dry flour, see there's even some hiding down there from me. I want to make all the dry flour have some moisture to it. And to mix that in, we can start doing some just little lift ups and folds here. Obviously we don't have any gluten development yet. We're going to let time work on that for us. So we're going to cover this. This came in the same set, kind of cute, right? I can put a link below to any of the things that I'm using here if you're interested in taking a look at them. We're gonna let this sit for at least a half an hour. While that's going, I'm going to get a baking tray, and I'm going to put it in the oven here on my lower rack, and I'm going to fill it for about 2 cups of water, and this is going to help create steam in my oven when we bake this. So I'm just going to prepare that and get it ready for when we're ready to bake, and then I'm also going to go ahead and line my baking trays with parchment paper so we're all ready to go when it's ready to shape. And here's my second tip. I like to leave out my measuring spoon that I'm going to use for my yeast, so that way it reminds me that I have not put the yeast in here yet. So it's just a little way to help me to remember to put that yeast in when we come back to it. Okay, it's been resting for about 30 minutes or so now, maybe a little longer. So to this, we're going to go ahead and add our tablespoon of yeast. Mix that in. Once that's all incorporated, I'm going to let that sit for another 10 minutes or so. And we're going to knead this for about 10 minutes or about 100 times, or give or take. So Alexa, set a timer for 10 minutes.
10 minutes, starting now.
Anytime you feel it getting a little bit sticky, you can add just a little more flour onto it, but we don't want it to be super dry. We don't want to push, we want to just kind of glide it against the table. Alexa off. Okay, when we hit about the 100th turn of the 10 minutes, just do it for the 10 minutes. We want to kind of get it in a little ball here. And you can see the gluten has been developed. It's not going to be as stretchy as if we were using a mixer, but you can see my finger through there. It's not tearing. Obviously, if I were to be rough with it, I could tear it, but it's not tearing just from that. Don't really want to add any more flour to this, and if I keep kneading by hand longer and longer and longer, it's going to need more flour to the point where it becomes a very dense loaf of bread, or 2 loaves of bread rather. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shape that a little bit, And I'm going to cover it like this, or you can put it in a clean bowl and cover that if you prefer. And we're gonna let it sit for about 30 to 40 minutes or so, and we'll come back to that. Okay. It has risen. So I went ahead and put my parchment paper here, and I'm gonna divide this in half, because this is gonna give me 2 loaves. And it wants to stick on my table here, so I'm gonna just grab a little bit of oil real quick. This is just avocado oil. You could use olive oil or any neutral oils. Okay, hopefully that was enough. Okay. Just gonna put it down here, get it on my hands. And I'm going to shape this into a little loaf here. Kind of like, I guess, baguette style. And we just want to get some surface tension on the top. Put that on one, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. Just kind of roll that up. Put that on there. I want them to be somewhat close in size here. Okay, we've already put the tray of water in the oven, which is going to help create steam. So the other thing I'm going to do is spray these with some just plain water, because we want to extend our rise time on these. So I probably will spray them a little bit as we put them back in. And then you're going to take a sharp knife and put some slits on the top here. Maybe about a ½ inch deep or so. And we're going to put this in a cold oven. Okay, so they're going in my cold oven, 400 degrees for 25 to 35 minutes. I have my tray of water in here that we did earlier to prepare it, and I'm just going to give them just one more spray in here. And we're going to go ahead and let the oven preheat while the bread is, I guess, basically doing a second rise, and we'll come check on it when it's done. Be careful for the steam when you open the oven. And I'm just going to temp that. Okay, I'm going to put it in for about 3 more minutes because the temperature was only at 180, and I want to make sure that we're at 190 degrees Fahrenheit. Perfect. I'm going to get that off pretty quickly. See if I can do this. Without burning myself. And we're going to let those cool. I'll let you hear that knock when they cool and I can touch them. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope this was helpful to you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and thank you for stopping by Grains in Small Places. Bye!